Hi, and can everyone hear me okay? Great. My name is Joe Lishi, and I want to welcome everyone to our webinar. We're going to learn about best practices in wraparound and multi-service programming. My name is Joe Lishi, as I mentioned, and I'm with 8Res, a firm that works with organizations to support them in research, evaluation, and strategy. We enjoy working with really great organizations to make sense of really tough problems that lead to improving the lives of others. We recently had the pleasure of working with Part of the Solution, a wraparound care organization located in the Bronx. One component of the project was exploring quality work in the human services sector. So we generated a report that provides a 360-degree sense of what really contributes to success in wraparound and multi-service care, with the most updated literature and input from practitioners and clients of these services. So we hope that you get a chance to look over the report. It's a state of the field report, and you'll see there's a synthesis of existing literature and the voices of clients and leaders in the field. So during the process, we found that there are several large focus areas that are critical to success. One was organizational approaches and practices, which includes a discussion about generating partnerships, differentiating programs to really tailor toward client need, and staff development and support. Case manager and client relationships was another area where relationship building meets structured approaches to supporting clients. Building communities of support, which can occur at program, organizational, or participant levels, is used to increase sort of stickiness of success. And lastly, there was a section on behavioral nudges and environments that can build efficiency and ease into the difficult work of moving folks from crisis to stability and ultimately self-sufficiency. So let me, I'm going to switch the share real quick. If you'll excuse me, I'm still figuring this out. There it is. Great. So it's a pleasure to share this opportunity to hear about real world experiences and solutions to some of the most important and difficult work out there. We're really lucky today because we have some leaders in the field with us, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and they'll have a short time to discuss some of the issues and solutions that they've experienced throughout their journeys. So please feel free to send any questions using, there's a Q&A little tab on your menu bar, and we'll do our best to make sure they all get addressed. So thanks again for your participation and getting to the webinar, and especially to our wonderful panelists who are actively building and improving the field. Without further ado, I am going to pass over the mic, as it were, to Christina Hanson, who is the Executive Director of Part of the Solution.
Hi, Joe. Thank you. Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining our webinar today. This is the first time I've ever done a webinar, so forgive me if I have any technical difficulties. But I just wanted to, first I'll introduce POTS, talk a little bit about the report as well, and then move into some things that we found really valuable in the report and some case examples from our work. So I'm going to share my screen. Can you see that, the webinar? Great. So POTS was founded in 1982, and we've been working with clients to help them move from crisis to stability and ultimately self-sufficiency for a long time. And we provide a mosaic of services, a one-stop shop that, for example, clients can get hot food, they can get a shower, they can get access to public benefits and to prevent evictions. And in recent years, POTS has seen that to help clients get to that last step, self-sufficiency, really requires addressing poverty in a more comprehensive way and connecting the various interconnected dots in people's lives. And so basically POTS has developed a new program we call Comprehensive Case Management that does just that. So the purpose of the program is to help people address their goals based on POTS theory of change. So they're working in the areas that we consider to be important to develop stability. So that's the areas of financial health, education, housing, and day-to-day needs. So POTS provide services in two ways. We continue to provide through what we call our human services focus. And our human services focus is really how we've been serving since 1982. If somebody comes to us and says, I'm hungry, we will provide them with a meal. If somebody comes to us and says, I'm facing an eviction, we will help them prevent that eviction. It's really, when somebody comes in, it's how can we help you? So we have services, it's transactional, it's very important, it helps people stabilize their lives. And we'll try and do it in multiple ways. Most of our clients get helped in a range of ways. So we'll ask them about their lives so that we know the many ways that we can help them. This new focus, this comprehensive case management focus, is a much smaller percentage of the population that we serve, but it's a switch in roles. So instead of us saying, oh, you need something, I'm going to provide it for you, it's talking about what is it that we ask the client, what would you like to achieve? And what is it that we can do together to make that happen? And so that's how we've changed the model. And it's really for people who want to work with us on a longer term basis, one-on-one, to create goals. And so this is sort of where we're going with some of our programming here at POTS. So to get into a little bit more detail, we have someone we call a stability and self-sufficiency mentor. It's a bit of a mouthful, so I'll refer to him from now on as a mentor. And basically what happens is that a new client may express interest in the program through one of our case managers during the intake process. Maybe the case manager assesses that this person has something that they have expressed they'd like to do, that they think the mentor would be particularly well suited to help them on. And through a series of meetings, they assess client strengths and challenges, understand and set long and short-term goals, and then carefully define the small tasks that will lead to those goals. And that can vary depending on the person quite widely. So for example, if somebody wants to get a driver's license, for one person, it might just be that they need to take some driving lessons and they go take the driver's license. For someone else, it might start at, oh, do you have any identification that you can use to get that driver's license? What experience have you ever taken a learner's permit test? Do you know any? I mean, so the steps will vary and they're designed to be broken into smaller tasks because of that's just a more effective way of working with the clients. The mentor will celebrate completing the goals, and overall will always provide a range of supports to the clients as they work towards their goals. Because we have such a robust mix of services here, as a client perhaps is trying to complete their associate's degree or learn a new skill, POTS is here to provide the food, the legal services, the access to income supports, and so on for each client as they address these goals. So POTS didn't want to, we've been operating this program for a little while, but we wanted to be able to make sure that we were using best practices in the industry. We didn't want to reinvent any wheels. We know that others are doing this type of work and they're doing it really well. And we wanted to learn from them. And so that's where we brought Joe and Hirshine and 8Res on board to do an evaluation of what other strategies were being used out there. And that's what led to this Wraparound Services report. And it's really been incredibly helpful for helping us develop our program, help us fully realize our wraparound services, and support clients in need. One of the key findings that was particularly salient to our experience was around building client connection and confidence. Our mentor finds that almost no work can be done with a client if they don't have the confidence to sort of take those first steps. It's been especially important because of the client population we're working with. Many are coming out of a hard time. Perhaps they're in a homeless shelter or have been out of work for a long time, or they've had difficult lives in a range of ways. And so that self-confidence is something that isn't necessarily there. And so getting people ready to take the next steps by building up that self-confidence is very important. From the report, there are findings about the use of role-playing, visualization, collaborative methods to teach, practice, and reflect, encouraging and supporting clients in monitoring and directing their own learning, and relating material to clients' knowledge and experience. And we have found all of those to be extremely useful in helping build the self-confidence of our clients, particularly in the situation where self-confidence can be built by building the client's knowledge and ability. So I just want to add a few things to that we do. So we start with our building of self-confidence sort of prior to the work. And that starts with listening through, active listening and motivational interviewing to understand sort of where and why confidence might be low, so that it can be most properly be addressed. And as I mentioned, for many, it is a lack of understanding of process or available options. Often the idea is that we need to change the mindset from looking at a situation as an either or, and rather look at it as more of a gray area, understand that there are some strengths there and that you can plan for challenges. Just because there is a challenge doesn't mean it completely eliminates something from a viable option in the future. And then really just providing the time to debrief and practice after the plan is put to the test. For example, you may do practice interviews with someone who's looking to get a job. And as we all know, we don't often get a job on our first interview. And so taking the time after that interview to understand what went well, what didn't, helping the person feel confident despite maybe not achieving that job. I'm going to talk a little bit of a few case studies from our client population. They're made very general just for client confidentiality, but these are things that our mentor has encountered. So for example, a woman wished to return to work after caring for her children for years, and she's scared to be asked about a hole in her resume, so is worried about even starting to apply for jobs. And so our case manager, what he did was first verbally to help her understand the skills she built as a mother and a caregiver through conversations about the different things she did in that context. Second, and this he found to be even more powerful for her, it was to help her write that into a resume so that she could see in black and white that indeed this was a time of learning for me and that these skills do have value. Seeing it on that paper really had strong meaning for this particular client. And then help her talk about that time in an interview through practice sessions. So he did practice interviews with the client so that she could address any questions that may come up. So the mentor really highlights that it's not just about highlighting strengths, but it's also about being prepared for things that might be a challenge, understanding that there is a pathway forward and being prepared with that pathway. The second one is a man came and he really wanted to work for a particular company that he respected, but he didn't think he had anything to add to that company. So it was a consumer products company. He thought sales was the only way to go, and just didn't see that maybe the company might have other pathways. So the case manager took the time to understand the skill set of the individual, showed him how to review job listings online, showed him listings for the company to show that in fact the job did have a range of other things in logistics, in managing warehouses, things of that nature, and see that the company isn't just one job and many areas. So again, it's taking away that gray area, helped to build the self-confidence of the individual. The person could pursue what he was looking for. I'll try and run through these last ones quickly so that I don't get too late on time. But basically, I have here a woman was seeking her GED, but she didn't want to take a class because she thought she would fail on the math. She didn't think she could handle it. So the mentor spent the time to listen and learn about her past math education. Based on that conversation, he found some math skills resources. Basically, it was they were test questions for the GED, and was able to do some of those together during the meeting. That helped her understand that she did know much of what the math was going to be. And he was able to then send her on her own to read and practice more for future sessions. So again, it was helping build that understanding. If she didn't know what was going to happen on the test, it concerned her too much, but when she could see, it was useful. And last example is around associate's degree. A client wanted to finish that, but was working. And it was partly understanding the client's schedule and constraints, but also educating on the existing of online evening classes. This client saw it was either work or college because his understanding was that college was the way it was when he tried to do the associate's degree the first time as a younger person, which was a full-time job, and helping to make that differentiation. So this actions of doing that how-to of building self-confidence through helping people understand how to address these challenges has been a really valuable work for us in helping clients move forward. I do want to highlight that not all self-confidence issues are related to lack of knowledge. There are a number of other reasons why people may not have self-confidence. And so one way that we build confidence is through holding clients accountable. If keeping track of that work, providing clear tasks, if they complete it, often that can help build self-confidence. And if they don't, it can help the case manager understand whether or not there's a lack of interest, can re-pursue motivational interviewing to see if this is the right path. Some it's about reaching out to simply listen and serve as a support system. Some people like to know that there's someone there who's curious and cares, and that can help their self-confidence. And then finally, it's important to understand when lack of trust can undermine self-confidence. And some aren't confident because they have a hard time trusting in others. And this is a much more complex problem, and it requires careful work on the part of the mentor to overcome. And it does come up, but that's something that we can discuss another time. So I believe the next person up is Ben Goodwin, the Executive Director of Our House.
Okay, thank you so much, Christina. Can everyone hear me okay? Can somebody do a nod? Okay, great. My name is Ben Goodwin. I'm the Executive Director of Our House in Little Rock, Arkansas. I'm gonna try to share my screen here. Somebody will give me a nod. Let me know if I've done it. Let's see. Okay, so you see a picture of a bunch of kids? Okay, thank you, Keith. I really enjoyed hearing what you had to say, Christina, and learning more about part of the solution. To kind of turbocharge the summary of what Our House does, I think it has some similarities to part of the solution. It's also an attempt to be a one-stop shop to meet the needs of people in Central Arkansas, particularly who are experiencing homelessness. We specialize in serving families with children. We serve plenty of single adults as well, but families with children are our bread and butter. And let's see, there's our mission. We have an ambitious mission. Our goal is to help families succeed in the workforce, in school, and in life. And so when you bring in the success in life as a goal, for one, you've set your sights really high, right? Success in life is elusive for all of us. And but on the other hand, you've immediately oriented your definition of success to what your clients define as success for themselves. And so success in life is different for each of us, right? And then the last thing I like to point out about that is you've also optimized your mission towards resilience, because success in life is, on the one hand it's ambitious, but on the other hand it's always attainable, right? No matter what hard experiences you've been through, whatever setbacks you've had, you haven't failed at life yet, right? That's just grist for the mill for the success you can work towards from that point on. And so one of our principles is that with our team is that we try to practice what we preach. And so that last part of our mission statement, which says how we do this work through hard work, wise decision making, and active participation in the community, those we consider to be our standards, not just for ourselves, but for our clients, or vice versa. And so I appreciate what Christina said about holding people accountable. We want to hold ourselves accountable, and we want to hold you accountable. We want to have high expectations for you, just as we have high expectations for ourselves. Just a quick visual tour. We have housing for about 120 people each night in one of two settings: transitional apartment style, more like college dorm style housing for families, and then mass barrack style emergency shelter. We take what we call a two-generation approach. So we want to meet the needs of parents and children in a coordinated way. And so we have out-of-school time programs that serve 90 children each day. There they are at a talent show recently in our Children's Center. Next door is our Early Childhood Center, which serves about 60 to 70 preschool age children each day, age 0 to 5. And the goal of both of those programs is to help children achieve healthy and positive development, prepare for success in school, and ultimately in the workforce and in life. Next door is our career center, which offers a whole lot of workforce training. About 60 to 70 people a day come through those doors. We help about 500 people a year find full-time jobs in our community, have a lot of great employer partnerships, hard skills training, soft skills training, practice job interviews. Again, a one-stop shop. I don't really have a slide for it, but we also offer mental health services. That's one of the newest program offerings that we have on campus, and those are also offered on campus. I just include this picture to show that we work with a lot of families. In addition to those who live with us, 120 folks live with us each night, but another 300 to 400 live other places. They either live in other shelters, they live in their own homes, but they are at imminent risk of homelessness, or they're former residents of our shelter or other shelters who have moved into their own homes, and we provide ongoing support to help make sure that they have their best chance of success and avoid and also avoid homelessness, return to homelessness. And then last but not least is case management, and that's kind of the focus of the report, which I found very valuable. And we think of it as sort of like the glue that holds all these programs together. We think it's really important. We want to find, just the right people to do case management in just the right way that we want it to be done, in a way that's empowering for our clients, in a way that that helps them achieve their highest success in life. And so that's what I'm going to spend most of my time talking about. I've got a little diagram of the two-generation approach, which again we take really seriously, and that's from the Ascend or the Aspen Institute, the Ascend Network put that together. But as you can kind of see from our programs, we're working with kids as individuals, we're working with parents as individuals, and then we try to work with the whole family as a unique entity in its own right. Okay, so let me go stop share real quick so I can talk, and we'll come back to this. The thing I kind of wanted to spend my time talking about, and it comes through strongly in the report, is the importance of finding the right people to be in case management roles on your team. I think that is at the end of the day what's most important. And a lot of the findings in the report are right in line with how we like to do things. But if you don't have the right people who sort of have the right mindset or come from the right place of have the right sort of principles, core principles that they bring to the job, their outlook on life, their understanding of the role they can play in working with people, it can be hard to get any best practice off the ground. And a couple of the ways that I have emphasized that, like with talking to my team or even my board or others in the community, is look, at the end of the day, the intervention that our house provides in people's lives, we talk about programs, we talk about services, but at the end of the day, it's really our team. It's really the staff that are building relationships with our clients. If you look at how we spend our money, our budget is about 75% personnel costs. And one way to describe that, when I'm talking to the team, I'll kind of put some responsibility on them to say, hey, look, donors in our community have donated money because they believe in the Our House cause, and really what they believe in is your ability to engage with people in an empowering way to help them make a positive transformation in their lives. And I'll compare it to like other programs, like we're a homeless program that works in the housing first is the big juggernaut in the homeless field. And there's some folks, who subscribe to that philosophy that would maybe say, hey, Our House, you shouldn't be paying all these staff members. You should just be paying people's rent to put them up in apartments. And so I think we have a responsibility to go out and, prove that, or do the best we can to prove that we're, making a difference in people's lives. I also think of a group called the Family Independence Initiative in California, really great program that just provides direct payments to clients. And, I have no problem with Housing First or them. I wish them all the best and hope they're really successful. But for our nonprofit, I feel like we have a burden to do it the absolute best we can in terms of the way we interact with clients, whether it's teachers in the early childhood center, whether it's workforce specialists in our career center, or whether it's our case managers or our mental health professionals. And so getting the right people in the door is really truly step one in making all of these best practices come to life. And the report, so let me just kind of go step by step. The report highlighted some interview questions you could ask people, and I thought they were actually really good. I put those into our database of good interview questions. I think it's really important to take those interviews really seriously, and look at a certain extent looking at skills that folks have gained, but really trying to look at where they're coming from. What's their outlook on these things. And and just to kind of jump ahead, I'm going to share my screen again. One thing that we've done over the past 18 months at our house that's been really helpful is define what we consider our guiding principles to be. And it was our team that developed these. I asked the team to think about, what does it take to really be successful in achieving our mission? What is it, what have you seen in high-performing superstar team members that relates to success in these roles? What have you seen on the flip side, people who weren't good at their jobs, who didn't do well? What were they missing? What were they lacking? How did they not fit? And so we took all of that thinking and deliberation and poured it into developing 7 guiding principles for our organization. And so just a few examples that stand out that relate to case management. When you ask, sometimes it's easier to see it when you think about how people fail to meet our expectations for case managers. And a good example would be, if a client, if you're talking bad about clients behind their backs, right? I bet that we've all been in a situation somewhere in our careers where we've heard that. Maybe it's been in a healthcare setting, maybe it's been in a social services setting, but talking one way to someone's face and then another way behind their back, mocking them or kind of deriding them, to coworkers or others, is a great example of, that could be a symptom of burnout. There could be a lot of things behind that, but that's an example of the kind of culture that we want to have. We want to be intentional about the culture we have, where that kind of thing is not allowed. On the flip side, another example would be a case manager who gets too invested to the extent that maybe they have what's called like a savior complex. I'm sure you've heard that, where they feel like, I personally am standing in the breach between this client and disaster, and it's all on me to do this, and therefore I'm the hero in this story. And you could consider those two sides of the same spectrum. There's a lot more to those examples, but it was those kinds of conversations that led us to try to hone in on what exactly we think is really important. And we ask questions about that in our interviews when we first bring people on. So I'm going to try to share quickly my screen. I've got a comment that I need to not share my notes. I don't know how to do that because I cannot see my notes. So just forgive those. These are our guiding principles. We've got a database of questions that we've developed for each of these that are in the form of situation, behavior, outcome, SBO, if you haven't heard of that, where we ask people, tell us about a time when you, for instance, had to set a boundary and then enforce it. So that'd be a question under the safety principle for us. And in this database, we collect like feedback. Did this question work? Did it not? We kind of score them. We all use them when we're doing interviews, and to try to, you know, let the cream rise to the top and ask the best questions we have. And then, so taking those interviews really seriously, finding the right people to implement these great case management best practices, and specifically for your organization, fitting in with your culture. I think that's really important. The second piece of advice that I have that we do is we take the 90-day review period really seriously. There's only so much you can learn in an interview hiring process. You can learn so much more in the first 90 days. And if you're really intentional and explicit in communicating that to everyone, if it's a known part of your culture that, you know, hey, we're gonna take this really seriously, and if you don't, you know, if you're not demonstrating the principles we want to see, or the skills or the heart for this role, then we're gonna make a decision to move on. And then sticking to that and enforcing it and making those hard decisions when your gut tells you you've made a wrong choice, but it'd be so much easier to keep them on. We found that it's really valuable and worthwhile to go with your gut on those and move on and hire somebody else. The next thing is training and reinforcing these things. We invest a lot in trauma-informed care training, motivational interviewing training. We do training in the 2-generation approach. We cross-train people. We try to train people, even administrative staff, in those things. So we sort of have a shared vocabulary as a team. One of the pieces of our trauma-informed training has been just really learning more about the specific rates of trauma among our clients. You know, it's one thing to just know these principles, but it's another to see some actual data on our actual clients. And we've been going through an evaluation process the past year with a third party that's been collecting some of this data. And so we don't know it for specific clients, but looking out across the whole, we have about 160 families enrolled in our program at any given time. On average, I'm sure some of you have heard of the ACEs score, but we conduct that ACEs screener for our families, and the mothers in our families have an average score of 5 out of 10 on our ACEs score, on their ACEs assessment. And so that means of the 10 known childhood traumas that are, you know, have been studied to have effects, you know, in terms of long-term outcomes, our clients on average have 5 of them. And so empowering our staff with some of this knowledge and understanding of, hey, this isn't just abstract, you know, theory that we're going over in these trainings, that actually pertains to our clients, has been tremendously helpful, I think. And it's led, you know, we talk in public, in our communications, we always talk 100% positively and in an empowering way about our clients. And so I'm going to, you know, risk venturing outside of that just a little bit here with y'all who are fellow practitioners in the field. But we all know that it can be really challenging working with people who've been through trauma, who've been through poverty, homelessness. You know, there can be strong emotions that come out. The case managers and staff can be the target of some of those emotions. They can be, you know, they can be lied to, just to put it bluntly. And those things can be hard for people who are in those roles to deal with. So one of the big mottos that we have on our team is quit taking it personal, Q-tip. And it's really simple but really effective, and I think it's really trauma informed. You know, whatever feelings you're feeling vis-a-vis a client, if you feel like there's conflict, if you feel like there's you know, distrust, if there's any kind of negative interaction there, just a reminder to quit taking it personal. You're doing a job here, and this doesn't ultimately involve you. And so that gets to my next point, which is, and I think this is really consistent with that practice what you preach philosophy that I shared before, but really take self-care seriously. So, you know, you've hired the right people, you've trained them, you've set up the right expectations as far as corporate culture, you've put a lot of responsibility on their shoulders to help people who have been through a lot of trauma change their lives. You got to follow that up with taking care of them. And so for the same reason that we encourage our clients to take care of themselves and to set boundaries and to be positive towards mental health and invest in your own mental health. We have to do that ourselves. Our staff, our team, our case managers have to do that. For the same reasons that we try to foster resilience in our clients, we have to foster resilience in ourselves. And when a client has a serious setback, we have to remind ourselves, hey, what would you case manage yourself in this situation? It's pick yourself up, dust your shoulders off, and keep moving. Hold others accountable just like you hold yourself accountable. And we invest in that through we invest in an EAP program. That's one of our most concrete investments in self-care. And we encourage everyone to take advantage of that. We have a great relationship with them. That provides mental health support to our staff really on an as-needed basis, which is wonderful. We invest in self-care in other ways. We have on-campus yoga. We have on-campus art therapy, for lack of a better word, group art, expressive therapy programs, and a lot of team building, morale building things that we try to do to kind of help people reconnect with the mission, help people reconnect with each other, know they have a support network on the team, et cetera. So that's where I'm going to stop and move on and cede my time. But in general, the point I want to leave y'all with is the importance of finding the right people to carry out the best practices that you identify, and then investing in those people to help take care of them while they're doing the important work of your organization. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me? Yes? Hello, good afternoon. My name is Erika Usui from the Forney Center in New York City, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Is it showing? Yes, okay, good. So my name is Erika Usui. I'm the Director of Program Evaluation, which basically means that I work with young people at the Drop-In Center in Harlem, and I ask them, what are some of the programs that you want? What are some of your needs? And then I relay that to the staff to make sure that our programs are relevant, that our programs are run in a timely manner, and that our programs are also nuanced, because the nuance of the young people change year to year, even day to day. The language that they use, that the culture that they're exposed to changes. So a big part of my job is to be on site at the drop-in center and make sure that our programs are exactly what the young people need. So I'll go over our mission. Our organization's mission is to protect LGBTQ youth from the harms of homelessness and to empower them with the tools needed to live independently. And the photo that you see here on the screen is our organization's namesake, Forney. He was a gender non-conforming teen who left his home at the age of 13. He was in the foster care system for a little while. He was bounced around to several different homes where he was beaten up. He was abused by his caretakers. And so he ended up living on the streets in New York City and in Harlem at the age of 15. He was dedicated to helping our young people. He was a peer outreach worker who went out on the streets to talk to the young people, to bring them into our programs. And he publicly advocated for the safety of homeless and runaway LGBTQ youth. Tragically, in December of 1997, he was murdered in Harlem, a little bit north of where our drop-in center is now. He was shot in the head and left for dead, and even to this day, the perpetrator of Ali's murder hasn't been convicted for this crime. And so the Forney Center was started in 2002 in response to the lack of safe shelter for LGBTQ youth in New York City and really all over the country. And so our mission statement is to make sure that they're safe and that we provide them with the tools needed to live independently. The first stop for the young people is the Drop-In Center here in Harlem. It's on 125th Street. And We meet the first needs of the young people, which is usually food, shower, clothing, and overnight shelter. I think that many times these are things that we take for granted. We complain about doing the laundry, that we get young people who come in and tell us they haven't been able to wash their clothes for days and for weeks. So we have laundry here, we have dryer, we have 3 hot meals per day, snacks throughout the day, we have fruits and vegetables that young people can snack on during the day. And then the photo there is of our community room where the young people can hang out, meet with their point persons, which would be their case manager, therapist, or their health counselor. And then going down this list of the things that we provide at the drop-in center. So comprehensive case management. We also have a clinic on site where we provide primary medical care, which includes all vaccinations. And also we have a few clinicians who are specialized in transgender healthcare, where young people can get consultations for hormone replacement therapy and also for gender affirmation surgery if they so choose. We also have HIV prevention and treatment services. A mental health team who does assessments and treatment. So we have a psychiatrist who sees clients for psychiatric evaluations. And we also have talk therapists and art therapists who hold sessions at the drop-in center. We also have vocational and educational specialists for young people to get their GEDs or go back to high school or enroll in college or to technical school if that is their path that they choose. We also have support groups for different identities based on gender, based on sexual orientation, based on experiences, based on interests. And lastly, we have special events, which means that we host parties. 4 times a year, we have a big party. We have a talent show. We have a prom for young people who might not have gone to their own proms because they were uncomfortable. We also have a Halloween party coming up. A holiday party coming up, and we also have open mics, health fairs, wellness fairs, and these are really important events for our young people because the holidays is usually a time when our young people report the highest rates of depression and anxiety, and so we do our best to make sure that during these hard times for our young people that we create a very home-like environment here at our drop-in center. The other component of our housing program is our housing program. We have an emergency housing program which consists of 66 emergency housing beds. These programs are meant to be short-term for 30 to 90 days for the young people stabilized. These are young people coming straight off the streets. They're street homeless youth. And so they have up to 3 months to stabilize to make a connection with their doctors, with their psychiatric care managers, with the case managers to create a more long-term plan, at which point they'll apply for one of our transitional housing programs, which includes our specialized transgender housing program. And this program has 76 beds. So in total, we have 142 beds. And if we include the overnight shelter at our drop-in center, we have a total of 168 sleeping units for young people per night. And so that's a little bit about our program. I'd now like to talk a little bit about one of our contributions to the State of the Field in Wraparound Services report. One of the things that, that we had provided for this report, specifically to Section 3, is on creating a community of support, specifically on our peer-to-peer programming best practices, which I'd like to brief today. So we have a number of youth peer training and leadership programs, and some of them are the General Support Internship. This internship provides general services at our drop-in center. For example, we provide program orientation groups for new young people who come to our drop-in center. We have about 450 new young people who do new client intakes per year. We serve about 1,500 unduplicated young people per year, and we intake about 450 new clients per year. And so for these new clients, the general support intern would conduct program orientations, give them a tour of the drop-in center, introduce them to staff members. That's the responsibility of this internship. The second one down is the peer outreach internship. This is one of our older internship programs that we've had for over 10 years. This internship is in charge of street outreach. So they would go with our street outreach team in the evening, usually in the hours of 6 to 10 p.m. To talk to young people on the street and let them know that they can come to 125th Street for a safe place to sleep, and for a hot meal, and for socks, mittens if it's cold, and for water during the hot summer nights. And we've also upped our social media outreach in the last few years. We use Twitter, we use Facebook. We've also been using Instagram and a few dating sites to reach out to young people to let them know that, that our drop-in center is a safe place where they can come. And the peer outreach intern also works with our staff members to host events. For example, they're very active in the month of June during Pride Month, tabling at different events, marching with other youth and with staff members, and other youth events throughout the year where they can reach young people to let them know that there are services available for them. The third one down is the Peer Health Advocate internship. This is a newer one we've had for about 5 years. This internship is one where young people engage with our health services team to provide linkage and navigation to care. And so young people would hang out in the community room as sort of ambassadors to getting healthcare and talk to young people about, hey, have you gotten your HIV test in the last 3 months? Are you interested? Can I introduce you to your health counselor? And so that's the sort of linkage and navigation to care that these interns provide. And we also have an internship called the Peer Navigator internship. And this internship is a little bit more hands-on in that they would escort clients to appointments, to doctor's appointments or to specialty appointments like MRIs or x-rays that might be a little bit confusing for the young people to figure out, or escorts to medical insurance appointments, which might also be a little bit difficult for young people to figure out. The next two internships are also relatively new. We've had for about 3 years now. The peer advocacy internship. This internship in the last few years worked closely with the mayor's office and also with state policymakers on the raise the age policy that we were able to pass in 2018 to increase funding for beds for older youth, 21 to 24 years old. So they would go down to City Hall to talk with legislators and lawmakers on how to better serve the youth. And the one right below, the TGNC specific peer advocacy internship, is similar, except it specifically works on issues that affects TGNC, so transgender and non-conforming youth. And so they would work with law enforcement officers in our community. They've also worked with clinicians, so doctors and nurses in our community, and also with service providers, including service providers at our agency, to put together training programs and best practices of how to work with this group of young people. Our two newest internship programs, one is the Resident Advisor internship, which we just started this summer. They're sort of like RAs in our transitional housing programs. So they would facilitate our RAB meetings, which is the Resident Advisory Board meetings, which is a town hall for young people in transitional housing program. They would take feedback from these RAB meetings and take them to our transitional housing leadership and make sure that changes are implemented in a timely way, and then that those changes are then communicated back to the youth. The last one is the Spanish language internship, which we're rolling out now. We created this internship a few months ago in response to the increasing number of Spanish-speaking youth, specifically young people coming in from detention centers, who would come to our drop-in center, and we had our intakes and our policies and protocol and all of our agency materials in English. And so we've been working with a specific case manager, a Spanish language case manager, who developed this internship. And this young person is going to be sort of our ambassador in translating some of our agency materials into Spanish and making sure that the young people who come to our services who are Spanish speaking get the quality services that they need and they deserve. So that's an overview of our peer-to-peer program, and I'd like to talk about one in specific. So this is a case study of the Peer Health Advocate internship. And in order for young people to be a part of this internship, we required them to go through a training program. And so this is a quick logic model of that training program. So first, we developed a peer health training program goal, and I think it's important to note that these goals were developed together with the youth. So all of our internships are developed by the young people for them. We of course pay them for their time, for their training, and for the work that they do. And so all of these materials that I'm showing you in this case study moving forward was developed together with the young people who were part of this internship. So the goal of the peer health training program, we identified as to build LGBTQ youth as educators and activists able to address different factors that impact their health and who are influencers and change agents in their communities. And so the language here is one that the young people mentioned were important. They said that influencers were very big in their community now, and that's what they wanted to be, and that's what they needed for long-term behavioral change. So we said, okay, we'll put that in our program goal. So then the training program goal for the young people had to then lead to the health services team goal, because they would work closely with the health service LGBTQ youth with the health literacy tools needed to protect themselves from HIV, STI infection or disease prevention, and to maintain good overall well-being, health promotion. So it's health, disease prevention and health promotion. So the basic tenets of public health, which then leads to Forney Center's overall mission to protect LGBTQ youth from the harms of homelessness and empower them with the tools needed to live independently. So this logic model we went over with the youth. They said these are the goals that we would like to meet, and we agreed. So then we came up with our approach. So we hired 10 participants. So this was based on the funding that was available to provide the young people with stipends. We wanted to pay them $12 an hour for their training and for their work that they did. So we were able to hire 10 young people for 15 weeks. We said that before you start working with the youth, we want to make sure that you're trained to do so, because in the past, when we collected from the young people, many of them said, well, you're sending us out to work, but we don't have the training to do a good job. So then when we ran this program, we said, okay, we're going to give you 40 hours of training first before you start doing your work.
Erika,
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I would just love to hear maybe one sentence about the solution, that a specific solution or best practice that you'd like folks to know about, and maybe another sentence summary to close out. We're running a little bit over. I'm sorry to sort of.
Solution. What's that? Sorry. That's a hard time.
Or if you can summarize the rest of your presentation in the next minute or so.
Okay, sure.
Great.
So then, okay, I'll skip ahead to evaluation. Sorry, I lost track of the time. So the way that we ended our internship program was with an evaluation. We looked at the questions of how are we shifting and building key players who change communities, and how did the youth continue to work as influencers and change agents look like in their communities? The solution was that they were able to gain long-term economic independence tools. They were able to get jobs, they were able to get certifications, and that was those were the concrete solutions that we were able to give them that led to our mission of providing the young people with concrete things that they could walk away from. I put some questions there to consider for putting this program into practice. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks so much, Erika. Hopefully you can all see my screen. I'm Jennifer Lowe, and I'm from Economic Mobility Pathways, which is a Boston-based nonprofit organization with a two-pronged mission. The first is to transform people's lives by helping them move out of poverty, and secondly, to provide other institutions with the tools to systematically do the same. And so we really seek to achieve that first part of our mission through our direct service work. We do programming that serves over 1,200 people annually. We operate a variety of programming, anything from emergency shelters, residential programs with supportive services, Choice Neighborhood Project in partnership with the Boston Housing Authority. We do intergenerational programming and a groundbreaking multi-year program that's really designed to support families in achieving economic self-sufficiency. And so all of the programs that we offer are really grounded in EMPath's mobility mentoring model, which is a brain science-informed, holistic, goals-based coaching approach. We seek to achieve the second part of our mission, being able to help other organizations systematically also disrupt poverty through our global learning network, which we call the Economic Mobility Exchange. And we have about a little over 115 different nonprofit organizations and government agencies who are part of this broader global learning network called the Exchange to learn together about mobility mentoring, coaching practices and tools, and then really share back with their learning how they've adapted the model for their own unique community and their own unique program models. And so together, we really try to learn best practices, really help each other share new tools, get those tools out there, get the best approaches out there, so that we're all helping to support people in achieving and reaching economic self-sufficiency. The Exchange shares our learnings through trainings, consultations, monthly webinars, e-newsletters, shared outcomes reports, and an online member portal that's really full of resources for all of our members. We have discussion boards, an online career navigation tool that really pulls from local labor statistics to help people explore what careers are in their community that really can provide a living wage for them. So I'd like to really speak about two key findings from the State of the Field report and reflect on EMPath's experience as it relates to each of those findings. The first finding is here you see on the screen, screening and hiring staff. And I think it was Ben from our house that really mentioned that getting the right people in the door is step one. And so Ben, I absolutely agree. We want to make sure that staff have those key qualities and competencies that we really desire and that really reflect our mission and our values. And so when I think about our work at EMPath, the mobility mentoring model that we use and that members of our learning network use is really based on brain science-informed, holistic coaching approach that's designed to support people in achieving their goals towards economic mobility. And what we believe about the people we work with and the way that we treat them is really the foundation of our mobility mentoring model. It's grounded in our understanding of how the stressors and trauma of poverty can impact our executive functioning skills, all the skills that we use to self-regulate our emotions, stay organized, and be goal-directed. And so given this approach, it's really critical that all of our staff exhibit a growth mindset, meaning that they really hold the belief that people's abilities and their intelligence can be developed and grow over time. And so we want people to hold that growth mindset not only about themselves and their work, but also for the folks that they're serving. And this holds true not just of the direct service staff who are coaching program participants, but really for all the staff at EMPath across all departments and positions within the organization, from our administrative staff to facilities and operations to development and advocacy. It's really important for us to create and embody that coaching culture in all of our work, both with participants and I think also, I would say, with each other as colleagues. And we tend to refer to that as coaching as a parallel process when we think about the peer coaching that happens even amongst us as colleagues or even in supervision with the staff that we're supporting. We also think that it's really important that staff hold high expectations for themselves, for their colleagues, and for participants that they're serving. And we want to ensure that staff see the potential in people and encourage and challenge them to reach their goals. And again, I think this reflects a lot of what Ben from our house was saying a little bit earlier on in the presentation. So holding to high expectations, particularly in this field, can be really challenging, and I think those on the call can really appreciate that. You know, consider that we who are working in this field are often faced with the weight of data that shows that people in poverty who try to make substantial gains are very rarely successful, that we are regularly met with prevailing stereotypes, which I think at best often depict participants as lacking the personal characteristics necessary for success, and at worst, that often participants are seen as detrimental to society. So we're oftentimes faced with these really awful stereotypes. And then regularly, direct service staff, I think they tend to bear an overwhelmingly personal and life challenges. They tend to bear witness to these life challenges that are faced by the folks that we serve. So as you all know, and as you can imagine, it's incredibly challenging then to hold high expectations. Yet having high expectations for people is crucially important. If we don't have high expectations, the coaching process will be over even before it starts. But when we have high expectations for what participants can accomplish, that belief alone can become life-changing. We found that there were some studies in academic settings that showed that even teacher expectations of students can have a greater impact on student outcomes, even greater than classroom size or students' race or income. So it's critical for all of our programs that want to make a substantive change in people's lives to really seek and create and fortify those high expectations in their staff. So over the years, we learned that it's important to assess for that right fit during the hiring process, really assessing for that growth mindset and holding high expectations. And of course, once we hire people, it's going to be important to provide that professional development and support to strengthen the skills over time. And so here on the screen, I just wanted to share a couple of interview questions that my colleagues here at EMPath have used. I know the report has a couple of others that you all can take away and use in your own work. And we hope that these are just some examples that try to get at growth mindset or high expectations for themselves and the other colleagues. And also, I wanted to share an example of some survey questions that can also indicate whether someone exhibits a growth mindset or holds high expectations. And so you see here on the screen, you can assess 0 to 6, and this actually was part of the report. So for the first 4 questions on the screen, a low response rate indicates a very strong growth mindset, and a high response rate indicates a very strong fixed mindset. And then the one goal-setting question, the last one, number 5, a low response rate indicates a very strong preference for setting goals too high, which we think is suggestive of having high expectations and low risk aversion. And so we actually, at EMPath, we administered this survey not only to our staff, but to the member organizations that are part of our global network and to our program participants. And remember, as you look at these results, that the closer the score is to 0, the greater the growth mindset and the greater the goal risk or high expectations are. And so the results that you see on the screen, it suggested to us that organizations such as EMPath, who, our staff have been doing this for years. We've been exposed to approaches and curriculum designed to reinforce growth mindset and high expectations. And our exchange members who are actively also working on supporting growth mindset and high expectations that may become over time more proficient in doing so, and then thereby really strengthening their outcomes. And we were really excited about these results. So once people are hired or once an organization joins our network, we want to make sure that we're able to help them develop and strengthen these coaching skills and attributes over time. And so the challenge here, I think that we all face, is that while people might attend a training, unless that content is continually reinforced, the skills are going to fade or perhaps be forgotten. So to ensure that there are the skills and the practice are maintained over time, we provide trainings, we provide shadowing opportunities for supervisors to shadow their staff in coaching. We do ongoing professional development with monthly webinars. We have additional training support, reflective supervision, all of the things, all of the practices that are so critical to make sure that we cultivate and maintain that coaching culture within our organization and the members that we serve through our network. And in doing so, we think that this can be more sustainable over time than going through a one-and-done training. So the second finding of the report that I want to highlight is the importance of tools of the trade, and in particular, the report really points to goal setting as one of those effective tools. And so at EMPath, we have a mobility mentoring model that incorporates goal setting in our work, and in fact, goal setting is one of the essential key elements of the mobility mentoring model. So in that model, goals are set within the context of our theory of change, and what you see on the screen here is an illustration of our theory of change. It's called the Bridge to Self-Sufficiency, but this is also a tool that we use in our work with participants. we bring this into practice, and through conversations that coaches have with participants, they ask them to self-assess where they're at within each of these 5 domains. So you can see on the screen, family stability, well-being, financial management, education and training, and employment and career. So thinking about where are you today? And then that discussion, which can take upwards of a half an hour to 45 minutes to an hour, people begin to see the interconnectedness between each of these domains, all of these aspects of their life. And the design of this particular bridge is really intentional in that it helps people think about the future. There's an upward movement here. So after engaging people in a conversation using this bridge as to where they are today, we want to shift into a conversation of where do they want to go, right? What do they vision for themselves, their family, and how can we strategize the best approach to get there? So essentially starting to do goal setting with people. And the challenge is that I think many of you might have experienced this, that while many of us, I think, understand goal setting in theory, it's actually not so easy in practice. The creating of SMART goals with very concrete, actionable steps, surfacing up those potential challenges and resources, it isn't necessarily easy in practice. And so to help with the process, we designed a very simple one-page goal action plan, what you see here on the screen, with a few key elements that that I just want to briefly point out. You can see on the front page, we have a SMART criteria that we want to make sure that we're using, making sure we understand why the goal is important to the participant, which, again, I think Ben had mentioned earlier how important it is that it's participant-driven, that goals are participant-driven, no more than 3 to 4 action steps. How do you recognize, how do I recognize and celebrate those steps? And then what are the challenges that we might face? And so in those coaching conversations, we can really explore with people, what are some potential detours? What else can you consider? What other strategies can you use? And this is just the back of the goal action plan. It's a brainstorming worksheet where people can brainstorm each of these aspects of the goal setting process and then just assess how confident they feel so that the coach can also help them think about what would it look like if you could achieve a 10? What does that look like and how can we work on getting you there? So all 4 elements taken together, coaching, the bridge, goal setting, recognition, really opens up our mobility mentoring essential elements. It's what makes mobility mentoring model the model that it is. And so I'm going to turn it over to Keith, the Director of Grants at United Against Poverty. Thank you.
Okay. So thank you for letting me be a part of this. You guys do amazing work. I kind of feel out of place amongst you stellar MBAs and doctors. I have a degree in art, but we all have our motivation. So I kind of wanted to start with a little bit about why I do what I do. I am motivated by anger and injustice. I was starting my advocacy career in New York during the AIDS crisis. And my first volunteer work was on the National AIDS Hotline, People with AIDS Coalition. I did volunteer at the Community Health Project, which is now part of the Forney Center. So there's some continuity there, and which is also where I received my HIV diagnosis. So my health declined in '93. I weighed about 130 pounds. Moved to New Orleans because my family's from there, and got on clinical trials. Obviously, I survived, and while I was sick, though, I got assistance through a housing program, housing opportunities for persons with AIDS. So when my health came back, my art career, although it stayed around, I was much more focused on understanding how social services work. And I became a housing case manager, pulling people out of the shelters in New Orleans, getting them healthcare, housing, and helping convince them that despite an HIV diagnosis, they could live a full life and get back to work. So 20 years later, here we are. And now work for United Against Poverty. We are an anti-poverty agency, specifically with the goal of a lot of what was mentioned here today, helping people in poverty get to self-sufficiency. My title is Grants and Data, but as anyone who works for a nonprofit, that's one of many, many hats. During the development of our current programs, I was the agency program director. So we were we have a very large grocery program that sees about 500 people per day, and we have 3 sites. So that's about 1,600 people coming through our doors every day. The qualifications to access this program are income under 200% of poverty. We quickly learned that food was a symptom of the bigger issue of poverty and tried to figure out what we could add to what we were doing. So we engaged local collaborative partners in substance abuse, mental health, domestic violence, and healthcare. So with a grocery program that's set up like a large grocery store, we have a lot of room. And so we have on site a health clinic and all those providers that are there at that one particular site. Each site, we have a site in Vero Beach, Fort Pierce, and Orlando. And each site has about 20 different collaborative partners. So whatever the person's need is, we can figure it out. We try to work in one particular database through the HUD Homeless Management Information System, which some of you are probably familiar with. That helps alleviate some of the repetition that the client has to go through. In Florida, we don't have very good public transportation, so having everything in one place really helps address the need and keep the person engaged in care. In 2014, we set out to design a program specifically for increasing income, because if you just break down poverty, the issue is money. So how do we help people get more money, and how do we get them to get jobs and keep jobs? So we did a lot of research trying to find out if there were lots of workforce programs around, and most of them were really good at getting people jobs. The problem was people keeping jobs. So the first thing with poverty we kind of talked about is you have to convince the person that they can actually do this. So we visited a couple of places, Twin Cities Rise in Minneapolis and the CARE program in Chicago, and they were workforce programs working with people in poverty that were particularly successful. So we found the common denominator was teaching emotional intelligence and a large community of collaborators. So that emotional intelligence, that's come up a couple of times earlier as self-confidence and building self-confidence. So we were, since we have this large program and we had the collaborators on site, we decided to reach out to all of them and have them participate in the development of what we call the Success Training for Employment program. So STEP, because as you know, with a nonprofit, you have to have acronyms. So STEP has 3 phases. It's 120 hours in class, cohort learning focused on emotional intelligence. It includes a really cheesy morning motivation that kind of forces everybody to sing or dance and kind of levels the playing field so that we're all starting at it in the same frame of mind. The rest of the class includes what we call JAWS, so job acquisition and workplace skills. Focusing on things like just basic computers. We need to find out where you are in the Microsoft world, and then focusing on resume writing and interviewing. We develop partnerships with area employers. Currently we have over 200 at our combined 3 locations. We began including these employers in our mock interviews, and they started hiring people on site. We follow the employed participant for 3 years or until their household income reaches 200% of poverty. We decided to quantify self-sufficiency with a number, the number being 200% of poverty as defined by Health and Human Resources. And that seems to be about the time where people lose their benefits. So we would consider that self-sufficient. So it gives us something to work for, a specific goal, as was mentioned earlier. Currently, we have about 529 people who have become employed. 52 have reached that 200% this year, and last year we had 36. Depending on the family size, that 200% can be pretty daunting. If you think about a single mom or dad who's raising 4 kids, they need to have an income over $60,000, and that's a little difficult in Florida, where the average wage is about $45,000. And then I don't know if everyone's heard of the United Way ALICE study, but ALICE is a really great source of information about poverty, and they've demonstrated for several years in a row that it takes about $55,000 a year for a family of 4 to just meet basic needs. So with starting salaries in Florida very, very low, it can take a while. So we follow up until they reach that particular goal. As far as the report, there were so many things that resonated with what we're trying to accomplish with United Against Poverty. Getting creative with the follow-up. When you're trying to support changing lifelong behaviors, it'll take a while, and you have to remain engaged. So in addition to phone, email, letters, and even outreach, what else can we do? So what do people look at every day? We did the social media thing, and then we worked with one of our funders to develop an app. And so the STEP app provides daily updates on job openings, job fairs, and daily motivations. And it's funny because I use it myself because I wanted to see what it was like. And morning motivations, it's surprising to me how well it works at my jaded era in my life. Sometimes these cliche things can kind of strike a nerve and just remind you where you want to be. So that's worked really, really well. As stated earlier, the report demonstrated the importance of having the right people. This is not the kind of work for everyone, and staff have to really believe in the cause and sometimes maybe even live through it themselves. And then, of course, providing the self-care. Definitely, I moved from frontline case management to ways to find money because I could not personally deal with the frontline and setting the boundaries and dealing with the stress and the high expectations that I had set that I was transferring to clients. So it's really important for you to recognize that when hiring staff. One of the things that I did when I worked in the homeless shelters and the jails in New Orleans was, imagine me about 40 pounds less walking into one of those places. A skinny white gay guy isn't going to get the best. We're not going to relate as well to everyone that's stuck in a shelter or in jail. So I didn't really fit in. So I would go in specifically saying, I don't know what it's like. I'm not even going to try to imagine what it's like. What I do know is HIV, and that's what I can help you with. And so that helped break down some barriers. And I think that it's important to acknowledge racism. It's important to acknowledge white privilege and misogyny and criminal injustice, all those things. You have to admit the things that you can't assist with and share what you can. Trust is probably one of the most important things in working with different populations. Understand that sometimes manipulation is a survival tool that people need. So helping your staff understand that that's going to be part of what they're going to have to understand how to deal with. Again, when you're trying to help change lifelong behaviors and help people realize their full potential, most of the time they've never had anyone encouraging them along the way. So Customer service and professionalism, setting boundaries. We partnered with an online platform through Coca-Cola called the Retail Learning Institute. They have certifications for a number of different areas that can help people bulk up their resume, but it also works with our staff to help keep them on the same understanding what the clients are having to go through. There are thousands of certifications, but we focus specifically on customer service, professionalism, business ethics, sexual harassment, safety, and hygiene. And the students can pursue beyond that into cashiering. And this helps, again, build the self-confidence, because a tangible piece of paper with a certification really helps to show that sense of accomplishment. So we're very, very happy with our partnership with Retail Learning Institute. So as far as some best practices or stories, during the beta testing of STEP, when we first started our workforce development program, we had a client who showed up every day. He participated, but clearly he was inebriated. I spoke to the facilitator about removing the client, thinking that it was disruptive to the class. The facilitator insisted that I let him work with the client, and although it took 2 rounds of this cohort learning and a lot of the collaborative partners on site, eventually the guy was linked up to a local VOTEC school, got his CDL, and became a truck driver. What I didn't know was he had lost his CDL from a DUI like 7 years before, and he had been homeless and alcoholic since. And so having those collaborative partners around helped us to or at least helped me as the person who's kind of overseeing the development of it to understand we don't have to be the experts in everything, bring them in, and people come with a myriad of issues that need to be addressed. So it's kind of cool. This guy checks in with us once a year. He is back driving, and his last report was he was making $70,000 a year. So doing really well. Lastly, employer partners now come to us because their HR department knows that we'll address any of the employee issues ahead of time. So it helps, it's almost like a supportive employment. And similar to what we've done with our food program, which I sort of skimmed over real quick, we're going to try to continue to find innovative ways to sustain the program. So ultimately, we would like this workforce development program to be a placement service so that it pays for itself. Our grocery program kind of works like that. People pay like 33 cents on the dollar based on retail. And so it helps to sustain the agency, helps to build a little, some more respect between client and staff members. And so sustainability, you're as a grant writer, that's what you talk about all the time. And then one last thing, transferable skills. So transferable skills is another really important thing in helping people understand that they can make that change. So one of the first people we dealt with was his first 25 years of his life, he'd been a drug dealer. So we sat down with him and talked about, okay, well, what does it take to be a drug dealer? So you have to be an entrepreneur. You have to have a business background. You have to have a bookkeeping background. You have to understand how to work with money. You have to understand customer service and professionalism, and helping the person see that bigger picture really help build the confidence to get them out of the mindset and see that they could get back into the workforce. That's
Great.
it. Thank you.
First, I just want to thank the panelists. I'm going to do a quick summary before we take a few questions. What I heard across all the different speakers was how you treat people is really the bottom line. We started orienting with POTS, it's really how you treat people through your approach to relationships, focusing on them to build confidence and agency in those clients. And this requires many approaches. So creating targeted and client-centered and client-appropriate approaches really requires a lot of creativity, as Keith mentioned, and hopefully a systematic process that I think we saw from the other folks. Another key element that we discussed was hiring processes. So hiring processes for building a team that can execute best practices and really achieve mission. So guiding principles or values that distill the organizational culture seem to be an essential and I think oftentimes missed element of the hiring process in organizations like these. So aligning and orienting your hiring process and performance management as well around the organizational principles. So culture might be something it's less something you build and it's rather something that new hires contribute to already, which is a very exciting idea that I don't think is common in the field. And in terms of that ongoing investment, sorry, Keith, I just got a mute. So I think that's something that's really powerful. And developing questions and processes that could include projects, it can include a demo or whatever it is that really get at what those principles or those values are, can really help get the right folks, on the team, which is really powerful. So emotional intelligence was mentioned from Christina all the way through and really highlighted, I would say, well, with every speaker, which is whether it's focusing on growth mindset, as EMPath mentioned, whether it's focusing on self-confidence, as Potts mentioned, what's focusing on feedback culture, like Ben mentioned, across, or it was finding that humanizing way to connect with folks, as Keith was mentioning, or allowing peer-to-peer sort of experiences, as Erika mentioned. Across all of the speakers, there was an element of how do we understand what emotional intelligence capacities or competencies are prioritized, and how do we execute them and ensure our staff can do that as well. It's something that definitely kept coming up. Quickly, because I want to have a few minutes for questions, collaboration was one other really powerful idea. Comes in different shapes and sizes. That is really powerful. And the peer training leadership is something that Erika really focused on, which I think can be really powerful to meaningfully engage the clients in the actual work that's happening by the organization. And lastly, something that was mentioned, I think EMPath mentioned, is community building in terms of the professional community building. So shared resources and building collective knowledge can really help push the work forward and help folks make sense of what they're doing really well. That being said, we have a couple questions, and feel free to use the little question, I don't know what the word is, icon, to send any questions. But one question was, what indicators is our house using to measure impact? And I would sort of release that more broadly to all the speakers. What have you found are the most sort of, the greatest levers or drivers of actual outcomes in terms of what you pay attention to? And are there any specific tools or recommendations that you might make in terms of measuring your impact? Let me make sure I can just unmute everybody here. So this might get a little loud.
First, and really quickly, we track a lot of things, and the things that I think are the most important to us are tangible indicators of economic, power, to put it bluntly. So like how much money you're making, earned income, unearned income, housing status. Those are some of our key measures. But then, as a two-generation program, we also look at indicators related to children. So we look at developmental checklists, we look at report card grades, standardized test scores, and things like that as well.
And I can share at EMPath, if you remember the bridge that I showed, that bridge graphic, we actually use that at baseline, at every 6 months to a year, and then at exit to track people's movement up each of the pillars of the bridge, as well as what I would call goal action or goal completion rates. So it takes a long time to move up some of those bridge rungs, and so to catch traction or to measure traction that people are making in moving up, we track and measure goal completion rates, in addition to all of the more granular level data that Ben, you mentioned, like the income, public supports, public benefits, all of that.
POTS also has a measure that we call a stability index, where we measure, again, it's we look at the 5 areas that connect with our theory of change. So how are people doing financially? What's their housing status? Are they in a stable housing situation? We look at whether or not they have, access to healthcare and are healthy. And we look at whether or not they have basic things that help day-to-day needs. They have access to showers and identification cards, just basic stuff. And then their education level, looking at how their education level changes. We also track, like the others, things like the goals set and met, and just various outputs we get, like how much food have they gotten from POTS, and did we connect them to various types of public benefits and so on.
Another question that popped up was, it was a more bashful participant who just sent it to me. Are the presentations going to be available? So that I'll leave to the presenters. I imagine they're probably comfortable sharing them. That's so we'll have those available afterwards. Are there any last thoughts that anyone wants to share? Like maybe a one sentence across each panelist?
All good.
I'll just say I was inspired by learning more about each of your organizations, and I'd love to, continue the conversation. So it's been a pleasure. Thank you. Thanks for bringing us together, Joe.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank everyone. I think you're doing incredible work. This is just the most powerful stuff out there, and you're all sort of beacons of hope in very trying times. And thank you so much. With
Thanks,
that, bye.
Thank you.